Community is everything. We're proud to support ours. Through partnerships with fellow community leaders and organizations, we're helping our neighbors access essential resources and services so we can all thrive. Learn more at bofA.com/community.
So we've got some great panelists up here. Also, as Jenna mentioned, NeighborHUB recipients in years past. And we want to have a little conversation. It's great to see familiar faces, which I do, even despite the lights. So it's great to see you all. And I know some of you know about NeighborHUB and the impact that it has and what it does. But I also thought that maybe there's some folks here who don't know about NeighborHUB or are a little unfamiliar. And I'd like to talk to some of those people who have been a part of the program over the last 5 or 6 years. So kind of let's start with each of you. Tanya, we can start with you. Can you talk about just, aside from NeighborHUB specifically, we'll get into that, but can you talk about your company or organization, what it does, and kind of how you came to start it?
Yep, thanks, Devon. Tanya Saldivar-Ali, born and raised in Southwest Detroit. Our organization is called AGI Construction. We are a construction project management firm located in Southwest that prioritizes equitable development projects. So we work very closely with schools, churches, nonprofits, small business owners, making sure that their projects are feasible and they can keep a hold of and realizing how much the built environment impacts. So for us, construction is not just about brick and mortar, but it's about people, spaces, and places, and who has access to those. And every Detroiter deserves a beautiful quality building to live in.
George?
George Adams, I'm the founder of 360 Detroit, Inc. We're a nonprofit community development corporation focused in the Virginia Park neighborhood in the city of Detroit. So I started in 2014 as a resident, and I wanted to see change in my neighborhood. So I wanted to see that change, so I decided to be that change. And I started to put my hands to work in what I saw needed to be done.
Very good. Concise answer. Khary?
All right, so I'm the founder of Detroit is Different, but in a lot of ways, I'm a griot, telling the story of so many legacy Black Detroiters, but even other Detroiters that just have this niche culture that's so specific to Detroit. I think we can sometimes get in like cliques, and people will say, this is not in Detroit, that's not in Detroit, that's not in Detroit, that's not in Detroit. And the Detroit I know is like a whole collage of everything. So I started Detroit is Different in 2014 to share that story. And since then, it's events. It's a platform for other people to share their stories through podcasts and video and photography and so much more. So I would think that really the mission is that culture, that creativity, and community all coming together. That's the mission of Detroit is Different.
And you do a great podcast. I've been on it and had the honor of sitting with you and talking. So we'll get more into that. For the NeighborHUB program, obviously this is a grant-based program where we award grants to nonprofits and small businesses for specific projects. And we're very intentional about kind of specifics. And what are you going to do with this money? What can this help you do? What barriers can this break down for you? What capacity can this build for you? So I want to let the panelists talk a little bit about their specific NeighborHUB grant and the project and what that allowed them to do. So Tanya, we'll start with you again.
Yeah, so the NeighborHUB grant really is going to get us to the finish line for the Design Build Green Hub. So a few years ago, we were able to secure a property within our own neighborhood. The landscape was changing very quickly. We are going to be actually located approximately about 3 blocks from the Michigan Central train station. And really it was the concept and the way that we went about designing the project was birthed out of the personal challenges and barriers that we were experiencing as growing as a minority contractor. And so outbirthed the incubator space to build capacity, not just for ourselves, but other minority contractors that live in Detroit, live and work in Detroit.
And George? Absolutely. And George, so I want to ask you, because George actually is a 2-time grantee of this program. This is the first year we kind of came back after 5 years and said, folks that had already received a grant were eligible again. And I'll just say, George does so much. I mean, he's got so much. If you ever go to Virginia Park, the neighborhood, and 360 Park, George has so much going on. And so because of that, we actually awarded him another grant this year because he's doing something really different. So why don't you talk about kind of what that first grant was just briefly, and then get into what you're doing this year.
So the first grant was to develop a community house, what we call our community art house, in the Virginia Park neighborhood. And so we used the first dollars to do that. You saw some of those pictures on the video where we have programming for seniors, youth, literacy, as well as health programs also in that space. This year, we're being funded for a community park that we opened up in 2021. So we not only do we activate the space, the art house, but we'll be activating and programming the park as well. And so we'll have movies in the park, we'll have camping in the park, we'll do some art projects, sports play. And so these dollars are going to help us with that programming as well as do some maintenance on the park as well.
And Khary?
All right, so the Detroit is Different community group received the NeighborHUB grant, which was amazing. And I know there's some grant winners in here too right now, so it felt good. What we wrote up was we wanted a stage just like this for the program we were doing. The program was a lot of studio. So it's kind of seems far away, but you all remember the pandemic and people were in the house and people weren't really connecting and doing things like this anymore. And the only way you could do that was outside. So we started connecting to that, this thing called a lot of studio, meaning a vacant lot of land and turning it into a production studio. So on the side of my house, I have 2 plots of land. And I said, we podcast outside, and I know so many of these wonderful performers, let's actually have performance. The first year of that, 2020, was amazing. The only thing about it is we had like a Little Rascal stage, and that may be aging myself. I don't know if you all ever seen the Little Rascals, but so we had like, we took pallets, we stacked them, and then we took plywood and we drilled in the holes, and it worked, but anytime it would rain, it would start warping and coming up. So I was like, let's get a professional stage. Finding out how much a professional stage costs, it's like, that's $17,000 in different bits and pieces. So we took that money, got a better stage, and it upped the quality of the production for a lot of studio for 2021. And people just always was like, yo, man, I love that stage. Can we get that stage over here? Can we take that stage over there? So we've actually been able to share in community with that same stage since then. It was amazing.
Awesome. And I kind of want to get into now kind of your neighborhood and your community as a whole. So we talked about the specific projects. I want to come back out because every neighborhood, as we learned, is really unique. And I don't think that myself or GM feels like the grant alone or one grant alone is going to necessarily transform a neighborhood. So what I'd like to hear from each of you who represent specific diverse neighborhoods, what is still needed? What is still needed in your community? What are still those barriers that, whether we have funders in here, whether we have potential partners in here, what are those things that are still needed where you live?
So for us in Southwest, we've always been a very strong immigrant community. It has been the heartbeat of our community. Small businesses are the bloodline of being able to generate income for their families for different reasons. And that's why I appreciate being, a small business, a micro business. Really, when we talk about businesses, we got to separate that. There are so many micro businesses that still need support to continue to survive, that provide services and gaps to really the Detroiters and the residents that need access, right? So continued support for small micro businesses in the forms of grants are always amazing because a lot of people are trying to keep their doors open. I think one of the most powerful grants that I've seen in the last few years is understanding or investments or support, right, is capital that really allows the small businesses to invest in their buildings. Because now we're talking about long-term generational wealth where people can build and keep what they have, especially in the face of what's happening right now and being able to hold on to that and being displaced. And lastly, I'll say is, we talk about training, and that's one of the things we're talking about, but I think the thing that makes us differently and unique is that we're a company that's committed to not just training people, but bringing people on the job and allowing them to be mentored. So whatever capacity you're in, I would say that you always have the ability to mentor. You always have the ability to use your platform to help somebody else. Is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do to continue to support small businesses and Detroiters.
Thank you. George, what do we need more of in Virginia Park and 360?
So 10 years ago, we boarded houses and cut grass. In 2023, we purchased 36 units of housing from the land bank, some of which we boarded up 10 years ago. And so we're going to bring on some affordable housing because our neighborhood is changing. And because our neighborhood is changing, people are being displaced. And we feel the need that we need to have some creative opportunities for people to be able to stay in the neighborhood that they've been in and be able to afford to stay in the neighborhood. So that's one of the challenges that we have, and that's one of the ways we're trying to meet that challenge.
So I live in the space that I work next to. Right next door to me is the home purchased in 1946 through my grandfather. He was one of the few World War II veterans that was black that got a GI Bill to buy that home. The home in that whole community was a Jewish neighborhood at the time. In about 5 years, it becomes a black neighborhood. So that's like the shadow of so much that frames not just my community, but a lot of communities in Detroit similar to mine. And I give that reference more so to say that that love that's needed and the resources for communities like mine kind of really starts with the ability to dream, which I know may sound very cliche, but a lot of people have broken dreams on my block. I love where I live. I love what I'm doing. But then when I walk across the street and see a lot of my neighbors, they're transient. Sometimes through some of the stuff they see and some of the people that come through Detroit is different. They feel different. They like, oh man, that's a city council member, or that's the rapper I like, and I like that. But it's like the resources that can bring more of that talent where people can feel as though they have an opportunity in my neighborhood is needed. So some of that is money. Money's definitely that. Some of it's home repair. Home repair is definitely that. Some of it is mental health services. But I think a lot of it really is honoring those families for who they are and letting them know that, like, yo, it's something for being here and that you're staying here, you have value. So as much as you like that these famous rappers have come to Detroit is different, I'll interview you the same. And I'm glad I can do that.
Well said. So as we kind of wrap up here, this is, I think, probably the first big conference that most people are coming to in 2024, unless maybe you came from CES. So with that, looking ahead to 2024, just quickly, each panelist, what are you most excited about in the new year, to accomplish in the new year?
Well, we're super excited to finish up the Design Build Green Hub. So if you want more information, look on DetroitDesignBuildGreenHub.com. We're also going to be launching a series of Real Talk series for Detroit contractors, where we're actually engaging contractors in the conversation and co-creating what these solutions look like and what these, how do we remove these barriers. And I think just growing and seeing Detroit, but I think most importantly is being, just staying rooted and being part of the process.
So I'm excited about bringing these 36 units online this year to allow my residents and my neighbors to be able to move into newly renovated affordable housing. And also, we have the art house that we did in 2019. We're also going to have an art house 2.0. Which we purchased next door to the park. So I'm excited to bring that online as well in 2024.
And how can people connect with you? Website, social?
Website, 360detroitinc.org.
So this year is like last year. We're most excited about the collard green cook-off we're going to do. That was like way bigger than I ever expected. So this year I expect more people, more energy around it. It's the 10-year anniversary of Detroit is Different, and we're pouring a lot into that collard green cook-off. You can go to DetroitisDifferent.com, but I'm also outside doing some interviews and things like that. So that's what I'm excited about.
Well, when is the cook-off?
Okay, all right. I actually have a kicker card save the date. It'll be, what is that? Thursday, August 15th. So it'll be the Thursday before the Dream Cruise. So it's a lot of time. And Yeah, it's a lot of people. And I do want everybody that is a licensed chef to know your collard greens can be a part of what we do.
Awesome. Well, I feel like you're definitely going to have a few more attendees to that event after that. Thank you all for being a part of NeighborHUB, and thank you all for chatting with us today.
Thank you.
Community is everything. We're proud to support ours. Through partnerships with fellow community leaders and organizations, we're helping our neighbors access essential resources and services so we can all thrive. Learn more at bofA.com/community.